I want to begin by asking you something simple. Have you ever felt like you're carrying a weight on your shoulders? Something that you can't see, but you can feel? It's heavy. It's exhausting. But it's not physical, is it? It's not a bag or a suitcase or anything you can touch. It's something deeper, something inside. And what you're carrying are emotional attachments, things from your past, worries about the future, thoughts and feelings that you just can't seem to let go of. We all have them, don't we? Maybe it's an old grudge or a regret about a decision you made years ago. Maybe it's a fear of something that hasn't even happened yet. Or it could be a relationship that you've outgrown but can't seem to leave behind. We hold on to these things thinking that somehow they're part of who we are. But the truth is, the things we cling to emotionally, they're not always serving us. In fact, they often hold us back. Now, let me ask you another question. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we hold on so tightly to things that only weigh us down? Is it because we're afraid of what will happen if we let go? Or maybe we've convinced ourselves that if we hold on long enough, something will change, something will fix itself. But deep down, we know better. We know that holding on to old hurts, old fears, and old identities isn't helping us. It's keeping us stuck. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you caught yourself replaying an argument in your head, thinking, I should have said this or I wish I hadn't said that? How many nights have you spent lying awake worrying about something that's out of your control? And what does it do for you? Does it bring you peace? Or does it leave you feeling more tired, more frustrated, more stuck? Emotional attachments, my friends, act like invisible chains. They hold us back from living fully in the present moment. They keep us locked in patterns of worry, regret, and fear. And the hardest part is, we often don't realize just how much weight we're carrying until it becomes too heavy to bear. That's when we start feeling overwhelmed, burned out, or just plain unhappy. We wonder why life feels so hard, so complicated. But if we look closely, we'll see that it's not life itself that's the problem. It's the emotional baggage we're carrying that makes it feel heavy. Let me be clear, letting go of these attachments doesn't mean you forget your past, or that you stop caring about your future. It doesn't mean you're giving up on something or someone. What it means is that you're choosing to release the weight that's holding you down. It means recognizing that those old thoughts, those old patterns, they no longer serve you. So let me ask you, what are you holding on to right now? What's that one thing you know deep down you need to let go of? Is it an old relationship that brings more pain than joy? Is it a fear that's keeping you from taking the next step in your life? Or maybe it's a belief about yourself that's no longer true, but you still carry it like a badge of honor. Whatever it is, I want you to know something important. You don't have to carry it anymore. You have the power to put it down, to release it, and to free yourself from the burden. Letting go doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. It makes you strong enough to understand that your peace of mind is more important than holding on to something that weighs you down. And when you start to let go, you'll feel lighter. You'll feel free. That invisible weight will start to lift, and you'll realize that you've been carrying something that you didn't need to carry. You'll feel like you can breathe again. So today I encourage you to ask yourself, what am I holding on to that's no longer serving me? And am I ready to let it go? Because once you do, you'll find that life feels a little easier, a little brighter, and a whole lot more peaceful. So why do we hold on to things that no longer serve us? Why is it so hard to let go of emotional attachments, even when we know deep down that they're weighing us down? I think the answer lies in a few places, and I want to explore them with you because understanding why we hold on is often the first step to finally letting go. One of the biggest reasons we struggle to let go is fear, fear of the unknown. It's one of the most powerful forces in our lives, and it can keep us stuck in situations that no longer bring us happiness. Think about it, we cling to what's familiar, even if it's painful, because at least we know what to expect. We know how it feels. There's a strange kind of comfort in that, isn't there? We say to ourselves, the situation may not be perfect, but at least it's familiar. The unknown, on the other hand, is scary. It's unpredictable. It's outside of our control. And for many of us, that's more frightening than staying in a situation that's not serving us. Take relationships, for example. How many people do you know who stay in relationships that have long since lost their spark? They stay not because they're happy, but because the thought of starting over is terrifying. They've invested time, energy, and emotions into that relationship, and the idea of walking away feels like admitting failure. So they hold on, they settle for what's familiar even when it's no longer fulfilling. And it's not just relationships. It could be a job that you've outgrown, but you're afraid to leave because you're unsure if there's something better out there. Or it could be an old belief you've been carrying for years, maybe something someone told you when you were a child that still shapes the way you see yourself, even though it no longer reflects who you are. We all carry these attachments. We hold on to past failures, regrets, and identities because they've become part of our story, part of how we define ourselves. But let me ask you this, why do we feel safer clinging to things that no longer serve us? Why do we allow fear to rule our lives? What are we so afraid of? I think at the heart of it, we're afraid of letting go because we've tied our identity to these things. We start to believe that these attachments define who we are. If I let go of this relationship, who will I be without it? If I leave this job, what will people think of me? If I stop holding on to this past mistake, will I lose a piece of myself? It's as if we've convinced ourselves that without these attachments we'll be lost, floating without a sense of who we are. But here's the truth, and I want you to really take this in. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not your relationships, your job, or your old beliefs. Those things do not define you. They are experiences you've had, but they are not who you are. And when we hold on too tightly to them, we limit ourselves. We limit our ability to grow, to change, to step into the person we are truly meant to be. I'll give you a personal example. I once knew someone who had a deep fear of failure. He was so afraid of making mistakes that he clung to the idea of always needing to be perfect. He believed that if he wasn't constantly striving to be the best, he'd lose his worth. This belief became a heavy burden, one that weighed him down for years. He passed up opportunities, avoided taking risks, and stayed in situations where he felt safe but unfulfilled. The fear of failure kept him stuck in a place where he couldn't grow. But when he finally let go of that belief, something amazing happened. He realized that failure wasn't something to fear, it was something to learn from. And without that fear weighing him down, he was able to move forward. He was able to take risks, make mistakes, and grow from them. And his life became richer, more fulfilling because he let go of the belief that he had to be perfect. Now, I know this isn't always easy. Letting go of emotional attachments can feel like losing a part of yourself, but I want you to consider something. What if holding on is costing you more than you realize? What if the very thing you're afraid of, the unknown, the unfamiliar, is where your freedom lies? What if letting go of that old relationship, that old belief, that old failure is the key to unlocking the life you've always wanted? Because here's the thing, most of our attachments, they don't come from truth. They come from fear-based thinking. We convince ourselves that we need these things to feel safe, to feel worthy, to feel secure. But that's just fear talking. The truth is, we don't need to hold on to anything to feel whole. We are already whole. We are already enough. And the moment we let go of those attachments, the moment we stop allowing fear to dictate our lives, that's when we step into our true power. So I want you to ask yourself, what are you holding on to out of fear? Is it really serving you, or is it keeping you stuck? And if it's not serving you, are you willing to let it go? I'm not saying it will happen overnight. Letting go is a process. It takes time, and it takes courage. But on the other side of that fear, on the other side of that attachment, is freedom. Freedom from the weight of the past. Freedom to live in the present moment. Freedom to create a future that feels aligned with who you truly are. So today I encourage you to take a moment and think about what's holding you back. What are you afraid to release? And what would your life look like if you could let go of that fear, that attachment? Imagine how much lighter, how much freer you would feel. Because once you let go, you'll see that you didn't need those things to define you. You are enough just as you are. And the freedom you've been searching for, it's been there all along, waiting for you to choose it. I want you to imagine something with me for a moment. Picture yourself walking through life day after day carrying a backpack. At first it's light. It's manageable. You barely notice it. But over time, little by little, you start putting more things into that backpack. You pick up a grudge here, a regret there, a little bit of guilt, some shame, maybe a broken relationship or a failure that still stings. Before you know it, that backpack is no longer light. It's heavy, and it's weighing you down. Now the thing is, most of us don't even realize how much we're carrying. We've gotten so used to the weight that it feels normal. We convince ourselves that this is just part of life, that we're supposed to feel this way. But what if I told you that the weight you're carrying isn't necessary? What if I told you that the life you want, the peace you seek, is already available to you if only you release that weight? You see, holding on to emotional baggage takes a toll on us, not just mentally, but physically too. When you're carrying around unresolved feelings, grudges, regrets, or fears, it drains your energy. It's like trying to run a race with a boulder tied to your back. You might still move forward, but it's slow, it's tiring, and it feels harder than it should. Have you ever noticed that after a long day of worrying, you feel completely exhausted, even though you haven't done anything physical? That's because emotional weight wears us out in ways we don't always understand. It's like our mind is in constant overdrive trying to carry all these unresolved emotions, and that takes up a lot of energy. Energy that could be used for more important things like being present with the people you love, or pursuing your passions, or simply feeling joy. Think about creativity for a moment. How can you expect to tap into your natural creative flow when your mind is constantly replaying old hurts, or worrying about what might happen in the future? Creativity thrives in an open, free space. It needs lightness to flourish. But when you're weighed down by emotional baggage, it's like trying to write a beautiful song with your hands tied behind your back. You're stuck. And the same goes for happiness. How can you feel truly happy when there's a constant storm of unresolved emotions swirling inside you? I remember talking to someone who was holding on to anger from a past relationship. They couldn't move past it. Every time they thought about it, they felt that old anger rise up, and it was consuming them. It showed up in their interactions with other people, even those who had nothing to do with the original hurt. They were short-tempered, easily frustrated, and couldn't figure out why they weren't feeling happy, even though life was good in so many other ways. It wasn't until they finally let go of that anger, finally released that emotional weight, that they started to feel lighter, freer. It was like a huge burden had been lifted off their shoulders. And suddenly life didn't feel so hard anymore. This is what emotional attachments do to us. They keep us stuck in old patterns, old ways of thinking. They make us feel like life is a struggle, like happiness is always just out of reach. But the truth is, happiness isn't something you have to chase. It's already here right now within you. But you have to clear out the emotional clutter to make room for it. What would happen if you could release all that weight? What if you didn't have to carry those grudges, those regrets, those old beliefs anymore? Think about how much lighter you would feel. Think about how much more energy you would have for the things that truly matter. The peace you're looking for, the sense of freedom, it's already within you, but it's buried under the weight of those attachments. And the good news is you have the power to let go of them. Let me give you another example. I once met a man who was carrying the weight of a past failure. He had started a business years ago, and it didn't work out the way he had hoped. He lost money, time, and his confidence in himself. For years after, he couldn't move past it. He kept telling himself that he was a failure, that he wasn't capable of succeeding, and that old belief kept him from trying anything new. It wasn't until he started to see that his failure didn't define him that he was able to release it. He began to understand that it was just an experience, not a reflection of who he was. And once he let go of that emotional attachment, his whole life changed. He started a new business, one that became wildly successful. And more importantly, he felt at peace with himself. This is what happens when we release the weight we've been carrying. We open up space for new possibilities. We allow ourselves to grow, to heal, to move forward. The lightness that comes with letting go is something you can't fully understand until you experience it. It's like taking off a pair of shoes that are 2 sizes too small. You didn't even realize how uncomfortable you were until the discomfort is gone. Now, I know that letting go isn't always easy. It's not something you can just decide to do and then it happens overnight. But what I want you to understand is that it is possible. And it starts with a willingness to release what's no longer serving you. It starts with asking yourself, what am I holding on to that's weighing me down? Is it a grudge? A fear? A belief about yourself that's no longer true? Whatever it is, you have the power to let it go. I once asked a friend, why do we hold on so tightly to things that hurt us? She thought about it for a moment and then said, I think it's because we don't know who we'll be without them, and she's right. Sometimes we get so used to the weight we're carrying that we're afraid to let it go because we don't know what life will look like without it. But I can tell you from experience, life on the other side of letting go is lighter, freer, and more peaceful than you can imagine. So what if today you decided to put down the backpack? What if you decided to release just one thing that's been weighing you down? Maybe it's forgiving someone who hurt you, not for their sake, but for yours. Maybe it's letting go of the need to control every outcome in your life and trusting that things will unfold as they're meant to. Maybe it's finally allowing yourself to move on from a past failure, knowing that it doesn't define who you are today. Whatever it is, I want you to remember this letting go isn't about losing anything. It's about freeing yourself from the things that are holding you back. It's about reclaiming your energy, your peace, and your happiness. And the moment you start to release that weight, you'll feel it. You'll feel lighter, you'll feel clearer, and life will feel a whole lot easier. So take a deep breath. Think about what you're ready to let go of. And remember, the life you want, the peace, the joy, the freedom, it's already here, waiting for you. All you have to do is release the weight you've been carrying and let it in. So what happens when we release the emotional ties that have been holding us down? When we finally let go, something powerful takes place. We experience a mental clarity that we may not have felt in years. Emotional freedom that allows us to breathe deeply, to laugh, and to experience life fully again. Our relationships improve, not because we change others, but because we're no longer tied down by old expectations, past wounds, or resentments. And physically, we start to feel lighter, healthier, because our mind and body are connected. What happens in the mind happens in the body. When you release emotional weight, your body responds in kind. Let me ask you something. Can you remember a time when you finally let something go? Maybe it was a grudge, a past mistake, or a fear that you had been carrying for far too long. Do you remember how that felt? Was it a sense of peace? A weight lifted off your shoulders? I bet you felt a sense of relief, as if you could finally take a deep breath for the first time in a long time. That feeling, my friends, is freedom. And it's not just any kind of freedom, it's your natural state. You see, freedom isn't something we have to go out and find, it's who we are at our core. We are born free with a lightness of being. But over time, as we collect experiences, hurts, fears, and attachments, that lightness gets buried under the weight of everything we hold on to. The good news is that sense of freedom hasn't gone anywhere. It's still within you right now. And when you let go, you rediscover it. I want to emphasize something important here. Letting go isn't about forgetting, and it's not about suppressing your emotions. It's not about pretending that things didn't happen or that you weren't hurt. Letting go is about releasing with grace. It's about acknowledging what happened, feeling whatever emotions come up, and then deciding that those emotions don't need to control you anymore. You're not erasing the past, you're simply freeing yourself from letting the past control your present. Letting go with grace means you can say, yes, this happened. Yes, it was painful, but I choose not to carry it any longer. You're choosing peace over pain. You're choosing freedom over fear. And when you make that choice, everything changes. Mentally, you start to think clearer because your mind is no longer consumed by old stories, old hurts, or what-ifs. Think of it like cleaning out a cluttered room. When you remove the unnecessary items, suddenly there's space to breathe, space to move around. Your thoughts have room to expand, and with that space comes clarity. Emotionally, you experience a lightness. There's no more need to replay old wounds, no more need to hold on to resentment or guilt. You can simply feel what's happening in the present moment, without dragging the past into it. It's as if the emotional fog lifts and you're finally able to see things for what they truly are without the filters of fear, anger, or sadness clouding your vision. Now let's talk about relationships. When you're holding on to emotional attachments, whether it's past hurts, expectations, or disappointments, it's like putting up walls around yourself. You might not even realize you're doing it, but those walls prevent true connection. They keep you from fully opening up, from being vulnerable, and from experiencing the deep, meaningful relationships you desire. But when you let go of those emotional ties, those walls come down. You can see people for who they truly are without projecting your past onto them. You can engage with others from a place of love instead of fear. And that's when relationships flourish. You'll find that your connections become more genuine, more loving, because you're no longer weighed down by the baggage of the past. And I want to point out something important. Letting go doesn't just benefit your relationships with others, it transforms your relationship with yourself. When you let go of the old stories, you've been telling yourself stories about not being good enough, about needing to be perfect, or about being unworthy, you open up to a deeper level of self-acceptance. You start to treat yourself with more compassion, more kindness, and more love. And when you treat yourself that way, you attract relationships that reflect that same level of care and respect. Physically, the benefits of letting go are profound. Stress, as we know, takes a toll on the body. When we hold on to emotional stress, it shows up in physical ways: tension in our shoulders, headaches, digestive issues, even sleepless nights. But when we release that emotional weight, our body responds. The tension melts away, our energy returns, and we start to feel more alive. We start to experience a level of well-being that we may not have felt in years. So I ask you again, can you think of a time when you finally let something go? Do you remember that feeling of lightness, of peace? That feeling is available to you right now. It's available to you right now. It's available every time you choose to release an emotional attachment that's no longer serving you. I know it's not always easy. Sometimes the things we hold on to have been with us for so long that they feel like part of who we are. But the truth is, they're not who you are. They're just experiences. They're just stories. And you have the power to choose which stories you carry with you and which ones you release. The more you let go, the more space you create for new experiences, new relationships, new possibilities. Holding on not only hurts us, it limits us. It keeps us from experiencing the fullness of life, the richness that comes from being open and free. When you release what's weighing you down, you open the door to endless possibilities. You give yourself the gift of living fully in the present moment, without the baggage of the past holding you back. So I want to leave you with this thought: what would your life look like if you could release the attachments that no longer serve you? What would it feel like to be free of those old hurts, those old beliefs, those old fears? Imagine the peace, the clarity, the joy that would come flooding in. How many times in your life have you tried to control an outcome, only to end up more anxious, more disappointed, more frustrated than you were before? We've all been there, haven't we? We think that if we just hold on tight enough, if we just plan every detail, if we keep everything within our grasp, then maybe, just maybe, things will go exactly the way we want them to. But how often does that actually happen? The reality is, most of the time, the harder we try to control a situation, the more it slips through our fingers. Let me ask you something. What has your need for control brought you? Has it brought you peace, or has it brought you more stress? If you're like most people, it's probably brought you more stress, because here's the thing: control is an illusion. It's this idea we hold on to, thinking that if we can control everything and everyone around us, we can prevent bad things from happening, or we can guarantee happiness. But life doesn't work that way, does it? Life is unpredictable. People are unpredictable. Outcomes are unpredictable. And the more we try to control them, the more we disconnect ourselves from the flow of life. I remember a woman who was always trying to control every aspect of her life. She had a detailed plan for everything: her career, her relationships, her health. Every time something didn't go according to that plan, she would spiral into anxiety and frustration. She thought if she could just get everything in line, she would feel secure. But that's not how it played out. The more she clung to her plans, the more things seemed to fall apart. She was chasing control, but what she really wanted was peace. Now here's the beautiful thing: peace doesn't come from controlling life. It comes from surrendering to it. It comes from letting go of the need to control every outcome and trusting that life will unfold as it's meant to. True peace comes when we stop resisting the natural flow of things and allow life to be what it is, without constantly trying to manipulate it to fit our desires. I know this idea of surrendering can feel uncomfortable. We're taught that control equals strength and letting go equals weakness. But it's the opposite. It takes real strength to let go. It takes strength to trust that even when things don't go the way you planned, you will be okay. And more than okay, you'll find freedom in the letting go. You'll find a calm that you didn't even know was possible when you stop trying to micromanage life. So how do we begin to let go of this illusion of control? It's not about throwing your hands up and giving up. It's about recognizing the difference between what you can control and what you can't. You can control how you respond to life, but you can't control life itself. You can control your actions, but not the actions of others. You can set intentions, but you can't force the outcome. Once you realize this, you can start to release the grip that's been causing you so much anxiety. Now let's talk about how to let go. Because I know some of you are thinking, okay, I get it, I need to let go, but how do I actually do that? It's a fair question. Letting go is not something that happens overnight, but it is something that you can practice every single day. And with each practice, you take one step closer to freedom. One of the most powerful tools for letting go is mindfulness. It's about being fully present in the moment, without judging or trying to change it. When you're mindful, you're not getting caught up in thoughts about the past or worries about the future. You're simply here, now accepting this moment as it is. And when you accept the present moment, you naturally begin to let go of the need to control it. Here's a practical way to bring mindfulness into your life. The next time you find yourself trying to control an outcome, stop and take a deep breath. Notice what's happening around you. Notice the thoughts running through your mind. Notice the tension in your body. And then ask yourself, can I let this be? Can I accept this moment exactly as it is? You'll be amazed at how much lighter you feel when you practice this simple act of letting go. Another tool is self-reflection. Take some time to ask yourself, what am I holding on to that no longer serves me? It could be a past relationship, a belief about yourself, or an expectation of how things should be. Whatever it is, bring it into your awareness. Acknowledge it. And then ask yourself, am I ready to release this? Sometimes just bringing awareness to what you're holding on to is enough to loosen its grip on you. Acceptance is also a key step in letting go. When you accept things as they are without needing them to be different, you free yourself from the struggle of resistance. Now, acceptance doesn't mean you have to like everything that happens. It just means you stop fighting against reality. When you accept what is, you stop wasting energy trying to control what isn't. And then there's forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful ways to let go of emotional attachments. Whether it's forgiving yourself or forgiving someone else, the act of forgiveness releases you from the chains of resentment, guilt, and blame. Remember, forgiveness isn't about saying what happened was okay. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional baggage that's been weighing you down. When you forgive, you're not doing it for the other person, you're doing it for yourself. Let me tell you a story. There was a man who had held on to anger toward his father for years. His father had made mistakes and he couldn't let go of the hurt. That anger stayed with him for decades, affecting his relationships, his health, and his happiness. One day, he decided that he was tired of carrying that weight. He realized that holding on to the anger wasn't hurting his father, it was only hurting him. So he chose to forgive. And in that moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: relief. He was no longer bound by the past. He had set himself free. So I ask you now, what's one thing you're ready to release today? What's one attachment that's been weighing you down that you're willing to let go of? Maybe it's an old grudge, a fear, or a belief about yourself that's no longer true. Whatever it is, I want you to imagine your life without it. What would that feel like? What would it feel like to be free from that attachment, to no longer carry it with you? Letting go is a process. It doesn't happen all at once, and it's not always easy. But each small step you take brings you closer to freedom. Each time you choose to release an attachment, you create more space in your life for peace, for love, for joy. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You don't have to control everything, and you don't have to hold on to things that are no longer serving you. Freedom is your natural state. And every day you have the opportunity to return to that state, one step at a time. Let's take a moment to talk about forgiveness. It's a word that comes up often in discussions about emotional healing and letting go, but what does it really mean? And more importantly, why does it play such a vital role in releasing the emotional baggage that so many of us carry? I want to start by asking you a question. How much pain are you holding on to right now because you haven't forgiven someone in your life? Or maybe the person you haven't forgiven is yourself. Think about that for a second. How much of the weight on your heart, on your mind, comes from holding on to anger, resentment, or regret? The truth is, forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools we have to set ourselves free. But let's be clear, when I talk about forgiveness, I'm not saying that we condone the bad behavior, the hurtful words, or the actions of others. Forgiveness isn't about pretending that what happened didn't matter. It's not about saying it's okay because sometimes it's not okay. What forgiveness is about is releasing the emotional ties that keep us bound to those painful experiences. It's about freeing ourselves from the chains of resentment, guilt, and bitterness. Now, I want you to imagine something. Imagine what your life would look like if you lived more in the present. What if, instead of being weighed down by the past or worried about the future, you allowed yourself to be fully engaged in this moment? What if you could experience every moment with a sense of openness and curiosity, without judgment, without attachment? How much lighter would you feel? How much more joy would you experience? There's a man I once knew who decided to make a shift. He realized that most of his stress came from worrying about things that hadn't even happened yet. He was so focused on planning for the future that he wasn't enjoying his life in the present. So he made a commitment to live more mindfully, to bring his attention back to the present moment whenever he found himself drifting into worry or regret. And you know what happened? His entire life changed. He started to experience more joy, more peace, and even more success because he was no longer distracted by thoughts of what might happen. He was fully engaged with what was happening now. This is what letting go allows us to do. It gives us the freedom to be present, to live fully, and to experience life as it's happening, not as we think it should have been or might be. And here's the beautiful thing: when you live in the present without the burden of attachment, you naturally create a sense of well-being. Your mind is clearer, your heart is lighter, and you begin to notice the beauty and the opportunities that are all around you. So how do we get there? How do we begin to live more in the present? It starts with awareness. When you notice your mind drifting into the past or worrying about the future, gently bring it back to the present. Ask yourself what's happening right now, and remind yourself that this moment is all you really have. It also helps to practice gratitude. When you're focused on what you have in this moment, whether it's the people in your life, the experiences you're having, or even the simple things like the air you breathe, you're less likely to get caught up in thoughts of what you don't have or what might go wrong. As we wrap up this part of our conversation, I want you to remember this: the present moment is where life happens. It's where your peace, your happiness, and your freedom reside. Letting go of emotional attachments is the key to living fully in the present. And when you do that, you open the door to a life that's richer, lighter, and filled with joy. Let's bring it all together now. We've talked about the weight we carry when we cling to emotional attachments, those old stories, past hurts, or worries about the future. And we've explored what it looks like to release them, to let go and open ourselves up to the present, to real freedom. So I want to ask you right here, right now, what's stopping you from releasing that weight, from letting go of what no longer serves you? Maybe it's fear of the unknown, fear of losing something that feels familiar. But here's the truth: that fear is an illusion. What you're afraid of losing might be the very thing keeping you from growing, from experiencing the peace and happiness you deserve. Letting go isn't about giving up or losing, it's about creating space for something new. It's about freeing yourself to live the life you're meant to live, lighter, more at peace, more connected to the present. Now think about it. What would your life look like if you let go of just one thing that's been holding you back? Maybe it's a relationship that no longer brings you joy, or a mistake from your past that you keep replaying in your mind. Maybe it's a belief about yourself that says you're not enough. What would happen if you released it, even just a little bit? Would you feel lighter, more free? The answer is yes, absolutely. You see, we all have the power to choose what we hold on to and what we let go of. And that power is in your hands right now. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment to start. You can start today, right now, by making the decision to release even just one emotional burden. Start small if you need to, but start. Letting go is an act of self-love. It's about respecting yourself enough to stop carrying what's too heavy, to stop replaying stories that no longer matter. When you let go, you're not just freeing yourself from the past, you're allowing yourself to live fully in the present. And that's where growth happens. That's where joy lives. That's where real peace resides. So I'm going to leave you with one last thought. You deserve to live a life that feels light, that feels free, that feels open. And the only thing standing in your way is the weight you're choosing to carry. But the beautiful thing is, you don't have to carry it anymore. You can choose to let it go. You can choose freedom. The world won't fall apart if you release your grip on those old attachments. In fact, your world will open up in ways you can't even imagine. So I ask you again, are you ready to live a lighter, freer life? The answer is within you. All you have to do is decide to let go and trust that what's waiting for you on the other side is peace, growth, and a deeper sense of joy than you've ever known. And remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Start with just one thing. Letting go is a process, but each step you take is a step toward freedom. You have the power. You've always had the power. Now is the time to use it.